Welcome. We're excited to have you join us, and we appreciate your ICF chair for helping us get this set up. We have an informative and interactive 90 minutes planned. So let's jump right into reviewing the agenda. We're going to do a little bit of intro of how Gina and I kind of came to work together, and we went through the logistics. One of the things is that I wanted to answer for myself when I learned about it and want to share is, why use this clean language coaching? There's so many different models out there, and especially through ICF, a very progressive, laid out approach. How and why does clean coaching fit in? We're going to go through, and Gina's going to give you a little bit more background about where it came from, how it evolved, as well as David Grove, that's been kind of touted as the creator. And then we're going to give you a chance to actually demonstrate it. One, by seeing a demonstration, and then two, you get to practice. We're getting a chance to just kind of talk about what we've learned and share some of the learnings, as well as some time to just have some questions. So that's kind of the flow. As you can see, the two of us have different backgrounds, and exciting that we've been able to come together and partner. So my journey was 3 years ago, leaving corporate America, overseeing learning and development for a large corporation, to moving into this coaching approach. And for me, I really wanted to be the best coach I could be. So I went through a couple different programs, ended up with ICF and working through their process to get certified. But I felt like there was something that was missing. And so it was around, how do you really ask those powerful questions? Those questions that once you've asked them and there's silence and your client's going, and you really get to something deeper. I wanted to be really good at that. And now my journey of moving into a coach was kind of reprogramming my brain from giving the answers to really pulling them out and asking the right questions to get to them. And clean language really fit that gap that I felt, and as I've coached other coaches now, I think we might have in common as we're especially becoming even stronger coaches. So I was introduced to Gina by my daughter, who is an art therapist, at a conference, and I started reading her books and her approach, and just really found it was one, well written. It's really great information, and the way that Gina teaches it and trains really aligns with how I learn, and coming from the learning profession, just a really a great way to do that. And that kind of stems from her desire to want to give this to us, plus her teaching background. So we decided that we wanted to partner. We presented last year at the ICF conference, Converge, and we were overwhelmed with just how many people showed up, and the feedback was very, very positive, that this was something that people really felt would help them be stronger coaches. And just in a little bit of time, by practicing it with each other, the ability to really absorb it and see how it could fit in was tremendous. So Gina is a true expert on using clean language. She's got a great background for it, and she's been training other trainers and coaches and therapists, a wide range of people. And she's also an author of 4 books that really just help break it down even further, and you can learn from. So what's different about clean language, and why, why do we care about this? And it's really using these clean language questions and focusing in on the metaphors that your clients have. And so many of these metaphors are unconscious, and they'll bring them up and they're not even realizing that they're bringing them up. But by seeing and identifying those and using those metaphors, you really can help your clients get unstuck and to their desired outcomes so much faster. I've been amazed how quickly I've been able to help people through the right questioning uncover things that they didn't even know that were there. And it aligns so nicely with neuroscience. So most of us that have gone through coaching programs, that usually is a big chunk of it, is, you know, how the brain works. And by having people get their own, come up with their own answers and think things through really helps to create those pathways and create new behaviors. So, and it also helps ensure that you're not bringing in your biases or your assumptions into that really critical process of having your clients discover and learn. And, you know, I thought I was doing this until I really learned more about clean language, and I realized, you know, some of the questions I was asking was they were leading people instead of really helping people go where they needed to go. And the align with the core competencies with ICF, I just found to be such a strong correlation. One, the most obvious was just powerful questions. How do you ask the right question at the right time that really helps your client move forward? It also gives you a really great process around active listening and techniques to be able to reflect back what is said in the most succinct and effective way for your client, as well as just creating awareness and being able to integrate and accurately reflect and identify what your client's saying and not saying, and then know what your next step is in helping them you know, take this journey to get the best desired outcome and the best approach for them. So, you know, those are the three competencies, but I could go through each one, even direct communication and how this fits in and using your client's words and how it helps them in the process. So now I'm going to let Gina, turn it over to Gina, and she's going to tell you a little bit about where this clean language came from.
So this is David Grove. As you see, he died in 2008, sadly young at 57, 58. He was originally from New Zealand, which I find interesting because his mother's family, she was Maori, which is, whoa, go back one. Maori, which is the Aboriginal native tribe of New Zealand. And dreams are very important in the Maori culture, which I find interesting for someone who came to that really unique approach to an awareness of the role that metaphors plays in people. The idea that symbols were something he was just very aware of. He originally started as a therapist. He got his degree actually at the University of Minnesota, I believe it was, as a counseling psychologist. There was no such thing as a coach, the way we consider it a field today. But around 2002 or so, he, as the coaching field began to become more and more prevalent, and so many coaches were attracted to clean language, he began to think in terms of how can you use clean, what processes can he develop for coaching in particular. And so it was definitely in the scope of how he thought. He was a very creative person. I mean, I've heard a number of people call him a genius. His IQ was just off the charts. As a person, he could be a bit strange at times, but he could also be very charming and just constantly developing new ways. And so there are lots of clean processes, lots of different methods or techniques or structured activities, that kind of thing. But they all come under the umbrella of clean language, which I'll describe. Okay. So the first thing I think unique about clean language is the way it uses your client's metaphors. Now, there are plenty of coaching and therapeutic techniques and so forth that use metaphors, but usually what is encouraged is the facilitator, and I like that term facilitator rather than coach or therapist or any other thing, because to facilitate means to make easier. And so I really think of my role as a facilitator. I'm not giving, you know, my advice is not my input. I'm making easier my client's ability to know himself and to help herself change. But the metaphors we're using are not coming from the facilitator. They're coming from the client. And we do this without realizing it. We use metaphors. One research I read said up to 6 a minute, which may seem incredible to you, but you can think of metaphors in various different ways. There are overt metaphors, that is obvious metaphors, such as, it's like hitting my head against a brick wall. Well, we all tend to hear those. Or how about, it's an uphill struggle for me. Well, you hear uphill. But what if someone says, I have to push myself? Well, where's the metaphor? It's the push. Push. And if you get really subtle, a little more advanced, certainly than we're going to get today, I have to push myself. There are two I's. There's an I and there's a myself. And if you ask questions, you will find they have different qualities and different strengths and weaknesses, and often they're of different ages. Usually the I is the adult self and the myself is often younger. Just to give you an idea of how subtle this can be. But the idea here is that we all use metaphors to encode our experience, to make sense of the world. We can't take in every experience and then remember that when we need information about how to handle a new situation that comes up. That would just be incredibly inefficient. So what do? We take a metaphor, we make a metaphor to encode our understanding of something that happens that's going to be useful to us. So let's say you have an experience of frustration. And so you subconsciously even say, it's like hitting my head against a brick wall. And you may have had frustration as a child, probably don't even remember. You may have had a second grade teacher who was frustrating, a spouse who was frustrating, a boss who was frustrating. And if the qualities or the characteristics of the experience were similar, you're going to file them like in a reference library, or to think of a computer, you're going to put them all in one folder. And then when you come across a frustrating experience, you're going to go, this is subconsciously now, you're going to go to that folder or that reference book to get some strategies on how to manage that situation based on your previous experience and your understanding of it. Now, sometimes in that folder is going to be very helpful information. If it's like hitting my head against a brick wall, I'm going to turn around and go the other way. That might be one strategy. So maybe that serves you. But sometimes there's the metaphor that you've encoded that experience in, you've either outgrown the solution you came up with, so it no longer serves you, or it was somehow faulty from the beginning. And this happens often when we're very small children. We come up with strategies, such as, I live in a scary household with an alcoholic parent. I'm just going to hide my true self. I'm going to tuck my true self in my heart. And it's usually in a box, in a cave, behind a shield. It's in some protective, small environment. And then a person gets to 40 or 50 or 60 and says, I just can't seem to really connect with the people I love. I really love them, but I'm just not bringing my true person to them. I wish I could be more open. So metaphors can support or thwart clarity, well-being, and our successful functioning in the world. And those are the things that you can reveal as a coach, that when you stay on a normal talking conscious awareness level, you may never get to the underlying metaphors that are holding this person in an old pattern, in an old loop that they just can't step out of. And so you can be remarkably effective very quickly. Diana, thank you. So what's clean about clean language? Why is it called clean language? Well, David Grove, as I said, was the developer of clean language. And by clean, he meant it is not sullied, if you will, dirtied or contaminated by you, the facilitator or coaches, your words, your history, your assumptions, your metaphors. We very easily put our own metaphors into questions we ask. It's very simple. We do it all the time, but with clean language, David worked on what questions can I ask? So that their clean language questions are very simple, very short. Rarely do the words have more than 2 syllables. They're things like, I'm going to show you, and is there anything else about a word from your client? What kind of, I don't know, change is that change? And you keep your perspective out. How do you keep, as Candace was saying, how do you keep yourself out of it and really let your client discover what he or she needs to discover? And that's what the term clean means. Okay, Diana. So I pulled some examples. Diana mentioned that she and I presented at the ICF Converge conference back in August. And people were sent some kind of form and asked them, what are typical things that your clients come to you to work on? And I pulled a bunch of words out of this list. I could easily have pulled more, but look how many there were that imply metaphors. And these are the kind of words when your client brings up, using clean language, you can help that person explore. Clarity. So think about as I read this list, as you read over it, how many times you've heard this from clients. Clarity, focus, balance, overwhelm, conflicted, blocks, burnout, letting go. Energy, you get lots of kinds of energy. Energy in different places, energy of different kinds. Alignment. You'll also get words like grounded or centered. Self-limiting, inner saboteur, crossroads, stuck. You hear stuck a lot. And move forward, you hear a lot. So these are the kind of words that you might hear, and some of them you might never notice there's a metaphor. Now, what do I mean by implied metaphor? If you look at each one of these words, they suggest an image. They could suggest an image. Someone might use it and not mean an image, and somebody else might very quickly come to an image, but they could. So if you heard overwhelm, someone might say it's like getting knocked down by a wave at the beach. Now it's a metaphor. It's only implied when the word suggests an image. You're not there yet. But that's what I mean by a suggested or implied metaphor. Okay, next slide, Diana. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to ask for one volunteer. So I don't know if someone else has decided to take the plunge. It's a really great process to understand it, actually going through as a client. So I highly suggest it.
Right. Hi, Cornelia.
Hi, Gina.
Cornelia, just to let you know, and I'm going to do this as much for everybody to hear sort of a little bit of how I introduce a client. Cornelia, it's not as obvious when we're not in the same room, but now see, there's the cat. I knew that.
I know, of all times. He's been quiet all morning and he shows up.
It happens all the time. You're going to see me. I'm not going to be maintaining eye contact like I would in a regular conversation.
Understand.
An invitation for you to explore yourself, not to explain yourself to me.
Okay.
You'll see me doing this a lot. And what I'm doing is I'm taking notes of your exact words so that I can try and be precise in repeating them back to you. So I'm going to be doing that. So just so you'll notice what you notice. And I'm inviting you to explore a bit more about your coaching. So do you have any questions before we?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Right. So, and when you're coaching at your best, that's like what?
What came to mind was a clear, flowing waterfall that flows into a tranquil lagoon.
Huh. And your picture?
My picture is just a soft waterfall.
Can you hold it up? Are you able to just sort of hold it? Hey, if you saw my pictures, you would never worry again. Okay. And just go ahead and describe that.
It's just a soft, gentle waterfall flowing into a tranquil pond that has ripples.
Okay. And a soft, gentle waterfall and falling into a tranquil pond with ripples. And clear and flowing. And that's coaching at your best.
Yes.
And when that waterfall and it's flowing, is there anything else about flowing?
The flowing represents being present and really listening to the client.
And what kind of listening is a listening when you're really listening?
listening to their words and not worrying about what you're going to say next.
Mm.
Or remembering you don't solve the problem.
Mm. And you don't solve the problem. And you're not worrying what you'll say next. And you're really listening to their words. And you're present and flowing. And when that waterfall is flowing, how fast or how slow is that flowing when you're coaching at your best?
It's a very slow to medium gentle. It's not a heavy waterfall like you see Niagara Falls. Just the soft flowing and the tempo is set by the client.
And the tempo and is set by the client. And it's a slow to medium gentle flow. And is there anything else about gentle when it's a gentle flow?
Yes, it's what comes to mind is, excuse me, as it flows into the tranquil pond and it ripples out as a reminder for me to be quiet and give space.
And a reminder for you to be quiet and give space. And what kind of give is a give when you give space?
The give is to respect how the client is processing. To give with, which ties into what you've been talking about, no judgment and no projecting of what my person, keep it pure.
And keep it pure. And what kind of you is a you that's good at keeping it pure and not judging and not projecting?
One who is at peace with myself and is open to accepting your client knows what is best for them. You are simply a vehicle for them to discover it.
And you're the vehicle for them to discover.
Yes.
And you're open to accepting your client. No.
Yes.
And when you're open to accepting, whereabouts is that open? On the inside? On the outside? On the inside? On the outside? Where is that open?
The open would be on the inside of me.
And where on the inside?
I would, excuse me, where am I feeling it? It's open in the mind and open in the heart.
And open in the mind and open in the heart. And what kind of open is that open in the mind? It's open.
Open in the mind in keeping your mind totally focused, keeping other thoughts out. And again, going back to, that's a no judgment zone.
And no judgment. Did you say no judgment zone?
In my mind, whatever you hear from the client is a no judgment.
And a no judgment and a totally focused. And when a mind is totally focused, that's totally focused like what? If there was an image or a symbol,
Totally focused as comes to mind as a camera lens that you would adjust to get the clearest picture you can see.
And a camera lens that you can adjust. And how big or how small is that camera lens?
Oh, wow. Maybe the size of like a telephoto lens.
Mm. A telephoto lens size. And is there anything else about that camera lens in your mind when it's open and totally focused?
No, a question popped in. I'm adjusting my lens.
Mm-hmm.
How is the client seeing what they're saying?
And what difference would it make if you knew how the client is seeing what they're seeing? What would be different?
Our focus is the same.
Ah, okay, and that's your camera lens. And you can adjust
Yes.
like a telephoto lens that you can adjust, and your client may or may not have the same focus.
Right.
It's open in your mind. And open to accepting is in your heart too.
Correct.
And what kind of open is that open in your heart?
It's an openness of looking and seeing the client as they are at the moment.
And it's a seeing. It's open to seeing the client at the moment. As they
And
are.
there's, yes, and a trust that they will find the intention they need.
Mm. And when a trust, whereabouts is that trust?
Again, it's in the heart. You have to, it's a dual trust, trusting yourself, trusting your client.
And a dual trust. And trusting yourself and trusting your client. And it's a trust that's in the heart. And does that trust have a size or shape there in the heart?
The shape is, it really has no shape. It's changing. It's warm. It's gentle. It's just like holding the space.
And that trust is holding the space and warm and gentle. And it's in your heart. And the open is in your heart, seeing the client as he or she is in the moment.
Yes.
When the heart is open, that's open like what?
Open, open as a gentle invitation
As an
to the client to
invitation.
be open. And most importantly, be open with themselves.
And it's an invitation. Be open with themselves.
Correct.
And so in the heart, there's an open invitation and a trust that's warm and gentle and holding the space. And the head is a camera lens that you adjust. And a clear flowing waterfall that flows to a tranquil pond with ripples. And that's coaching at your best. And as we're just about out of time for right now, is there anything else about all that for right now?
No, but that's a fascinating system because I've learned so much about me and confirming some things about the being visual and everything else. Thank you. That's quite fascinating.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to just stop right there and see if we can get everybody back. So if you all, let me see. Yeah, just come on back in.
Wow.
If you heard me hesitate at a moment about the camera lens, I was just thinking to myself, okay, I've only got a couple more minutes. Let me just not go further with this. And I had to just sort of make a quick decision. So that was about what, 12, 13 minutes. So if you were to do a typical session of an hour, hour and a quarter, mine typically run, you know, we're just sort of getting started. What's really different about this question that I've given us all to work with as we practice is it's not a desired outcome, right? It's nothing the person said she wanted. It's simply developing more information. It's simply getting clarity. And there are times in coaching, there are plenty of times you might get clarity about things. But you know, if you spend an hour, usually at some point you go, okay, this is wonderful, I'm really clear, but like, where are we going here? Sometimes clarity alone is the change the client needs. Wow, I know a lot more about myself or this issue or myself in this situation than I did before. And that might be all they need, but sometimes change is needed, but we're not going to do that today. It's just, I simply can't demonstrate it to you in 10 minutes and explain where you go and so forth. But I want you to know that clean language, there's much more to it than just getting information. You can also use it. There are strategies to use it for change as well. Okay, so I see Connie has a question. What if a client's not willing to engage and they get frustrated with the process? You know, I would do something else. You know, you don't want to spend your time frustrating a client. But what you can do is you don't have to do a full-on clean language session like I did, you know, going in a semi-trance almost state and explore that way. You can sort of be dropping clean language questions in. And so what would you like to have happen? Is that one of the key questions. It's a beautifully simple question to help focus someone on their desired outcome. We tend to be very good at describing our problems. Some people are really, really good at it. Blaming others on and on. This has happened to me. This has been the situation. And they're just, either that's where their focus is or they're stuck with the problem state and that beautiful clean language question. So what would you like to have happen? What would you like it to be like? So you can just drop a clean language question in here and there. You can not do a full clean language session, but you can be listening for people's metaphors and realizing that they're much more than simply a way to describe something like in a poem or whatever, to be ignored until you get back to the real stuff. No, this is the real stuff in a very deep, profound way. Not the only real stuff, but it's not fluff. It's very revealing of people's processes. Connie, was there anything else? Did that answer your question reasonably?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Gina, there's a question about, can you share your note-taking strategy?
I'm happy to, although why am I suddenly hearing my own echo? Sorry. I'm happy to. I'm not sure how helpful it really is. When I teach training, it's usually about day 2 as the sessions start to the practice sessions get longer and people have to take more notes, and we'll share strategies. But I can honestly tell you, after teaching for many years, everyone's got to develop their own note-taking strategy. It's just like if you were to sit down and look at people's notes from a lecture, we all sort of develop, you know, techniques, shorthands we use. Partly it comes from experience of just doing sessions, that you start to know what are keywords you need to keep track of and what don't you need. So the general guideline I have is you can't keep up with your client, you're writing down too much. If at the end of the session you've written down a whole lot of stuff that you never referred back to, you're writing more than you need. If you've got a really great memory, I know people who hardly take any notes, bless them. I don't count on myself to remember that accurately. I mean, I can show you what I was doing. I'm not sure how helpful this is, but so I always write down the first thing they say at length. Or in this case, in this case, I didn't say, normally you start with, and what would you like to have happen? You're trying to get a desired outcome. But in this case, I gave Cornelia the when you're coaching at your best. So I wrote down her first answer. So I'm definitely writing down adjectives, main nouns. I mean, I do it as a list. Do not write down, you got to just get keywords. So clean, flowing, waterfall. I did a little sketch on my piece of paper of her sketch, just to kind of remind me and write down some keywords. And then what I've started doing maybe in the last year is I'll write a line from the word I'm going to ask a question about, so that I don't have to rewrite it. Okay, it was about flowing. And I can just tell you I asked about flowing because flow comes up all the time. Think of energy that flows. You're in the flow. They're parts of systems. They're connected. This flowing often ends up being significant. That's all I can just tell you. So then I got anything else about, I just said AE is when I'm present and I'm really listening. So then I asked about listening. So what kind of listening? And then I jotted down a few words.
Yeah.
So,
I'd add one thing. When you go through this process, I think that was one of the biggest things for me is you really start to hone in on what makes sense to really pay attention to. And how do you listen in a way that you write those things down, and the explanation and the extra stuff that they give you, you're not even writing it down because that's just explanation. You're just going back to those juicy, the resource words, the metaphors, those things that are really going to help open the doors for your client.
This is Jill. I have a question.
Sure.
What's this? You repeated what the client said, Cornelia in this case, verbatim throughout. So what's kind of the purpose or the strategy behind that repeating and using the exact words?
Yeah, great question. And I could probably spend 10 minutes, but let me just pick a couple of reasons. So one is, it's a hypnotic technique. There's something very soothing about it. You'll notice I said it more slowly than she said it most likely. So it's slowing someone down. It's allowing them to hear their words again. And you start to go, oh, yeah, did I say that? Wow, there's more to that. So actually in clean language, to give it really quick, they're what we call full syntax. Full syntax is 3 parts. First, you repeat everything the person said, not everything, but you sort of pick a chunk, and then you pick a smaller chunk, and then you ask a question about a piece of that second chunk. So part of the repetition is to help in this really smooth way to help focus the person in on what I'm going to ask a question about. And another thing that happens when you do that repetition is the feelings that resonate with those words, and particularly a metaphor. By holding a person longer in that place, they're connecting more with those feelings and associations and everything else. So the repetition is a way of slowing it down. Another thing the repetition does, it took me a while to realize this, but I'm actually, when I'm doing the repeating, I think of it as a metaphor. I'm getting entrained with my client. It's like wavelengths. And when I'm repeating, I get entrained with them, and it really somehow connects me with where to direct their attention. And I realized that when I was listening to other people facilitate someone and even taking notes so that I knew I would really be staying focused. And I thought, my gosh, I'm sitting here. I don't know what I'd ask next. I never have that problem when I'm doing a session. What's the difference? The difference is that I wasn't doing the repeating. How interesting that was.
How about if we answer one more?
Thank you.
I was going to say, if we answer one more question, and then we'll give them a chance to practice, and then we can ask more questions or answer and ask questions at the end. So there's a question that's set from Candace as far as, what if your client just wants clarity instead of a desired outcome, which really is their desired outcome? How do you know when to stop? When have you gotten there?
Well, right. First of all, when you run out of time. And run out of time may mean that you've decided you've got, 3 things you want to get done in this coaching session, and you've got 20 minutes to spend on the clean language bit. Because you've got, maybe you want to help with a resume or, other things. So whatever chunk of time you decided to devote to this, that's part of it. If the person begins to basically find no new information, they start to repeat themselves and then you've probably come to the end of what's useful of that little chunk. There's almost something always happens. You can almost always keep going. It's the problem is more about how do you restrain yourself and stop when you have other things to do or time is running out. But that's a great question. There was another one here. Sorry, Diana, but a question, how do we help our clients to see the meaning in their metaphors? This is really important. You don't. Clean language is not about interpreting. So it's certainly, to be clean, it's not about how you interpret their metaphors. You may think you know what they mean, whatever what they mean means, but you may not, or you may have insight to what part of what it means, but metaphors by definition often have many associations. And so the meaning, it might be much richer than you could ever be aware of. And so I think when you pin it down and try and label and define and analyze the metaphor, you begin to limit its potential. So this is not about coming up with a metaphor that you then analyze. You let the metaphor do its thing. And maybe Cornelia, if we have time later, can speak to a sense. But first of all, when I tell clients that, most of them go, oh, good, I thought I had to do that. They're relieved not to have to. And secondly, it's just the clarity and the restructuring that goes on in a client's mind-body system as the system learns from itself about itself does not need analysis or interpretation. So the metaphors are just the metaphors.
Yeah.
And I've had people been on a call like this who said, I did a session with David Grove 30 years ago. I got to be the volunteer and I've never forgotten the metaphor. And I think, yeah, because it's yours.
Yeah.
So that was a really good question I just wanted to address. And we may be able to come back. How do you choose what keywords to zero in on? Well, my training, the full-on training takes 8 days. I can't answer it in 2. But to give you a one-word answer, Diana mentioned it. The word is listen for resource words. Listen for metaphors and resourceful things. Confidence, strength, relax. Could be flow, could be open. A resource is defined by the context. Go into a business meeting and be relaxed may not be resourceful in that context. When you get home and you'd like to leave work behind and not bring it in the door with you, to be relaxed may be a resource. So the words you listen to are what the client says is of use or value.
Quick things, and probably in the most succinct way would be is if you can just type in the chat a couple of your reactions, and then we'd love to be able to get, if you have questions, we'd love to have the questions, but maybe real quick, overall, just everybody put a few comments in the chat, and then maybe can we take 1 or 2 people that would like to just do a quick, what did you think, that would want to share with the group?
How about 1 or 2 comments from people about being a client? Specifically.
So for people who are just on the phone, can you hear me?
Yes, who's this? All we see is your phone number, sorry.
Oh. Hi, this is Georgiana.
Hi,
I've been muted most of the time.
Oh gosh.
Would this be okay for me to jump in with a comment?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, so my observation is as a client, it was beautiful and I loved the process, and I really, in 4 minutes, got a terrific insight into myself and my coaching work.
Wow.
And as a coach, it felt incredibly uncomfortable, and I felt really stupid asking what else over and over again. And I wanted to embellish with other types of questions and a different way of asking it, and putting my stuff on top of it. So there's a lesson in there, I'm sure. But yeah, so those would be my comments.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, how easily, I mean, one of the things I appreciate about clean language is the discipline it gives me not to be tempted to add those other things, you know. And of course, we were just giving you one question to learn, and there are 12 basic clean language questions and then some others as well. So which is why I demonstrated for you in the demo. I didn't just use one question, and as Jill can tell you, I wasn't able to restrain myself in the practice either. Okay,
Yeah.
another question?
Or reaction?
Another reaction as a client, your experience? One more person with a client experience?
Well, I could actually see everything that she was describing, and it was it was so clear as a coach, and it helped me to stay in the clean language by me visualizing it. And
Right.
I'm wondering, is that what you do too?
It's a great question. I'm sure I inevitably do visualize, but I hold my visualization very lightly, by which I mean, I know that what I'm seeing is not what my client is seeing, no matter how much he or she's been describing it. You know, it's virtually impossible. So while I may have some ideas that may guide where I ask questions about, I'm very careful not to confuse my image with what the client's seeing. So I'm really listening, because they'll say something and you realize, oh, that's not what I thought she was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes 10 minutes
Good
later,
point.
they'll mention something about like, you know, the cat that's been at my side the whole time. And you thought, cat? I haven't heard about a cat. And there's a good reminder to you. The client's never going to be able to tell you everything they see or imagine whatever. And they may leave out details that come out later. And it's just a really good reminder. You're never getting the entire picture. But I appreciate, Connie, what you're saying about this sort of feeling of connectedness. And okay, how about two people would like to comment on their experience as a facilitator? Of course, you just had a couple minutes and just one question, but anything you'd like to say you noticed? Or
I'll jump in.
This is Jill, and like Georgiana said, I kind of wanted to embellish a little bit. It was challenging just to stay with that one question. What I really liked about it is that this model plays to one of my strengths, which is I am very much a word person. Some people are very visual. I'm always very analytical and logical, and so words just stick with me. And so to be able to use this with my clients as a way to flow through a conversation is really exciting for me.
Yeah.
yeah,
I think my comment similar to Jill's is that I like kind of doing the flow chart and picking up on the keywords and then doing the arrow. So thanks for that tip, Gina. And then for me as an introvert, I found it helpful to be able to kind of reflect back to Candace, you said this and this and this, and then, so what about this thing? It helped me to buy a little time to think about that next question and to
yes.
created a structure for the next question to emerge.
Great. Yeah, that's one of the things you asked about, the repetition. And I didn't take the time to say, but one of the great advantages is it gives you time to decide what you're going to ask.
Right.
First learning, some people, it's really challenging to repeat people's words back exactly. And that's all they can focus on, so it's not helping them. But you will get to the point, I promise, if that was hard for you, where you can use that time that you're doing the repetition to finish taking the notes you want to take and to figure out what your next question is going to be.
Yeah.
So that's entirely selfish advantage to the repetition, and it certainly serves the client well. But
right, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
And if you see some of the remarks and the comments, very positive, especially from the client perspective, and the comments about, boy, I wanted to ask another different kind of question. I thought I had overused this as a client or as a coach. Your client doesn't even realize what you're saying. They start to get into their own subconscious in this metaphor. So trust the process and trust keeping it very simple. When you start putting in a lot more words, and you make it a little more complicated, that's when it's not clean, and you start to guide your client. And just trust the process, just practice it. And we get to be stronger coaches is just going back and practicing. So
I love Kirsten's comment about it. Made me really curious about my own imagery. And, that's absolutely what clients will experience, even sometimes if it's emotionally hard or whatever. This is very engaging. It's like, wow, who knew I had this inside me? And so, you know, yeah, they get really curious. And when you ask questions, you're implying your curiosity. You're encouraging them to be curious about themselves as well. Okay, Diana?
Yeah. What we'd like to do, because I know everybody's got, you know, schedules too, is we've got 3 minutes officially left. We'd love to just wrap up. We've got like 1 or 2 more slides. And then if you want to stay, Gina and I can stay a few more minutes. If you have some additional questions, I just want to honor the time that was set up. So just think about if there's an insight that you have that you'd want to share, or additional question. I'm going to share the screen back up there. So, you know, what can you use clean language for? And I think you guys already demonstrate this is, you know, it's about clarifying, enhancing internal resources. People, you know that they can get to this calmness once they find it and see it and access it, or confidence. Being able to remove patterns, blocks, you know, focus that forward moving on solutions, helping them to really move forward. So, you know, some of the same things that your practice you're probably already doing, but just such a wide use of applicability. So we'd ask you to think about if there's one thing today that you've learned, what will you do with that? And a question that you might have. So think about that and feel free to add that into the chat box. You know, just as a wrap up. Again, you know, people make these beneficial and lasting changes for themselves, just like you were seeing and is starting to experience, when assumptions are held at bay, when you aren't being that coach that's guiding and you know, guiding where you think it needs to go, you know, based on your assumptions or you know, just biases that you're not even aware of. And that there is this great information that clients are able to access subconsciously by helping them move towards that by using clean language. And it can be extremely empowering as well. So just so we could stay in touch, we wanted to share kind of our email. It's info@cleanlanguageresource.com. We've got a website that we have up and running now, cleanlanguageresources.com. And then we've just started this Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook and you want to continue the dialogue, we invite you to join us at Clean Language for Coaches Resource Center. Gina and my goal is to really create a place where coaches can go to get information and to share their experiences. So our way to kind of give back to the coaching world and create even more connections. So, you know, we'll be posting things that we're doing. We've got some workshops that are coming up, a couple 2-day. Gina's got some very detailed 4-day sessions that I'm also helping her with that are just tremendous ways to continue the journey if you're interested. So we'd ask you to check out any of those if it makes sense for you. And, you know, just really appreciate you being part of this and helping us continue to take clean language and using metaphors a little bit further. So thank you so much, Joy, for reaching out and coordinating it with us. And if there's any other closing remarks, Gina, you want to make before we kind of go back to the chat area and questions and insights?
I'm looking at a completely black computer, so I suddenly feel very cut off. But yeah, just thank you for your curiosity, everyone. And you know, email us if you have questions. I'm very enthusiastic about this and enjoy talking about it. And we're basically moving to a model of we will come to you in terms of the group rather than putting together something in our hometowns. So if there, you know, a group of people in the ICF Phoenix chapter or elsewhere who say, we've got 6 people, will you come? That kind of thing. I don't train more than 12 at a time. This is very much a hands-on kind of training with a coach at your side. And we'd love to hear if you're curious about wanting to put that together.
So this is Joy, and I just want to first of all say it was a pleasure working with you, Gina, leading up to this event. And Connie, thank you for highly recommending these ladies. They did not disappoint, I would say. So I'd like to just personally extend my thanks on behalf of everyone And I would say to the members on the phone or on this call, we, in particular Candace now, is really, really looking for input and feedback on how we can continue to add value to you all as coaches within ICF. So if something like this would be interesting for you, let's coordinate with Gina. I personally am raising my hand and I already connect with your Facebook.